Of course, this morning as we talk about Jacob and Esau, we're talking about brothers fighting over an inheritance, and probably one of the most famous examples of this in history is when Prince John stole the throne of England from his older brother Richard the Lionheart. Now, the details of which are quite famous, although most people have the story a bit hazy because we have it primarily in our minds from the various versions of Robin Hood that we are aware of, whether that's cartoons or movies or TV shows. There's a bunch of versions of Robin Hood, and Prince John is often villainized, along, of course, with the Sheriff of Nottingham, as the people who made that situation happen. The history of it is that their father, King Henry II, originally had an heir that was neither of them, and that was their older brother, Henry, who would have been Henry III, but he died before their father. And so Richard became the heir, as the middle son. Richard, however, was a warrior who was not really suited to be king. He didn't want to be king. He wasn't raised to be king. And he went off on the Third Crusade, along with the King of France, in order, and then of course fought in Jerusalem and all of that. On the way home, he took the shortcut through Central Europe and was imprisoned by a prince with whom he had a different squabble, and so he was there for a while. Whilst he was there, his brother John attempted a coup, and he locked up his brother's allies. Well, Richard paid the ransom, he returned home, and everything fell apart. Everybody abandoned John. At this point, instead of killing his brother, or putting him in prison, or taking out his eyes, or any of the things that you would normally expect, Richard pardoned him, forgave him. When Richard died 10 years later, John became king without the deception or the treachery of the first time when he tried to become king, and he ended up ruling longer than his brother. He ruled for 16 years, during which he famously signed the Magna Carta, which had a huge impact on English history moving forward. So in that case, brotherly jealousy and scheming didn't lead to anyone being murdered. Well, let's take a look at the text of Genesis, because it's not going to be so smooth. Genesis 26:34 begins, it says this: When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beri the Hittite, and also Basmath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. So hold this thought, because we will start next week's message in chapter 28 by talking about Esau's wives and Isaac's need for a wife. So this is going to come back around. This is all we have about Esau's wives here. It's likely included at the beginning of the story as foreshadowing. It's a hint that not all is well between Esau and his parents now that he is a grown man. So hold that thought. We'll come back to it next week. It says, when Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see. They didn't have glasses back then. You don't have to be that old. If I didn't have mine, you could say I can no longer see, at least not more than about 2 feet from me. Isaac's functional blindness is a necessary element in what is to come. Without him being blind, things would have taken a much different course. So that's setting up what is coming. He called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son, here I am," he answered. So Isaac is almost blameless in what is about to transpire. I don't think he really deserves any blame. Perhaps he could have acted sooner when his eyes were still good, but the infirmities of age can sneak up on people. Maybe he didn't think he should have done it then. So what is the plan? What does he have in mind? Isaac said, "I'm now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver and bow, go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. prepare me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die. Isaac wants to take care of business according to his wishes before he dies. Now that's a wise and helpful thing to do, so that your family is not left to guess what it is that you would have wanted, and certainly so that they don't end up quarreling about what you would have wanted. So Isaac is trying to take care of that, and his clear choice is Esau. Esau and his father were more alike than Jacob and his father. We don't know if Rebekah told him about the prophecy from the Lord that the older will serve the younger. If she did, Isaac has his own plans. If she didn't, then he's just following the cultural expectations of the day and what his heart is telling him. He prefers Esau. And now we have this. Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. I think listening might be a kind way of putting it. I think maybe she was eavesdropping. Either way, hearing this news is a temptation to Rebekah. It is the first step down a road that leads to tragedy for all four of them. Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Esau. This moment where she is listening in starts everything. Now, it could have stopped here. There was no reason anything needed to happen. Rebekah gave in to this temptation, however. She heard this news. She could have done nothing with it, and we wouldn't have a story. But she did give in to temptation. Temptation to do what? Here it is. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, her temptation was to plot against her husband and her firstborn son Esau with her favorite son Jacob. The seed of the sin to come is sown by Rebekah's favoritism. How and why a mother could act this way isn't explored by the text of Genesis. We know that human emotions are quite complicated, and the ones involved here are treacherous. So what is she going to plot with him to do? Here it is. Look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Before the plot can be hatched, Rebekah needs to bring Jacob in on the news that she has obtained. As with many people, sharing salacious news has a purpose. She already knows what comes next when she tells Jacob this news. So here's a question. What made Rebekah think that Jacob would listen to her? Well, she knows her son. He's taken advantage of his brother once before. She's just going to ask him to do it again. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats so I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat so that he may give you his blessing before he dies. I think it wasn't just his eyesight that was bad if she's going to be fooled into thinking that a goat and a wild deer taste the same, but that's okay. Rebekah's plan is to deceive her husband and swindle her son. There's no reason for us to sugarcoat this. These actions are sinful, plain and simple. Even if Rebekah rationalized her choices by saying, hey, this is God's will, that Jacob supplant Esau. We know, however, that God does not fulfill his will through immoral methods, nor does he ever ask his people to do his dirty work for him. This method cannot be God's will. Rebekah is instead taking matters into her own hands rather than trusting in God to keep God's word. We just saw this with Isaac in the last chapter when he lied about his wife because he didn't trust God to keep his word. Now she's doing the same thing. It's unnecessary, and it will have profound consequences. Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother. So at this moment, Jacob has a choice to make. We already know he's willing to scheme, and we know he's able to pull it off because he did it once before. But will he conspire with his mother to cheat his brother a second time? Will he be willing to deceive, this is a bit bigger perhaps, his own father in the process? This is a big moment in Jacob's life. If we sin in a particular area one time, it's a failure, and it's serious. But repeated sins are habit-forming. They're character-defining. Jacob has been a schemer, but is that what he wants to be? Is a schemer. At this moment, he has the choice. Perhaps Jacob didn't stop to think this through. He was afforded a chance to gain something that he coveted. Are the potential consequences of this being considered? Is even thinking about where this might lead? He says, but my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. Well, only it seems is Jacob thinking about the consequences of getting caught. Regret at getting caught is not repentance. Plenty of people feel bad about getting caught and paying the consequences. That's not the same thing. And fear of getting caught is not evidence of a noble character. Just because you don't do something because you're afraid of getting caught doesn't say something good about you. Jacob's focus is on what could go wrong, not on why this plot would be wrong. He's not thinking about this in a good way. So that's not a good sign at all about the character of Rebekah's favorite son. Jacob is concerned that Isaac would be upset to learn that his son is trying to trick him by taking advantage of his failed vision. You think that Isaac would be upset? So how do we feel, for a parallel, when schemers prey on the elderly by pretending to be their grandchild who needs them to send money? Every time we hear about one of those schemes, how do we feel? Not good, right? That's what Jacob is planning to do to his father. So yeah, he would be upset if he found out. His mother said to him, my son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me. So parental favoritism was festering in this family, and now it rears its ugly head. Rebekah is so invested in favoring Jacob over Esau that she's willing to take any potential curse on herself. Wow. Culturally speaking, she's being brazenly reckless. This is not the kind of behavior that, culturally speaking, would have been acceptable. It's very reckless. The consequences, if they get caught, don't seem to bother her at all. So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and smoothed part of his neck with the goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. So I think our customary recollection of this story is about Jacob, Esau, and Isaac. But Rebekah's role is that of the mastermind who plots the whole heist. Jacob has proven himself to be a capable schemer. Maybe he learned how from his mother, because she's doing like an Ocean 11's amount of trickery here. She's got the whole plan laid out. If not for Rebekah, Jacob couldn't have known about this narrow window of time to sin against his brother and father. If not for Rebekah, Jacob might not have come up with such an audacious plan, or he might not have had the guts to pull it off. It should go without saying that it is morally wrong for anyone to help another person do something morally wrong. Our legal system actually has a category called conspiracy to commit that can apply to all sorts of illegal acts. Rebekah is not going to do it herself, but Jacob's mom is pulling the strings here. Has that been your experience of family? Is there someone that you're related to that has actively worked, or maybe even still is working, to tempt you to do what is wrong? May the Lord protect us from such negative influences, even if it is our own mother in this case. He went to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob agreed to participate in his mother's audacious plan, but now he is face to face with his father, turning his thoughts and his attitudes into sinful actions. This is the first concrete step, the first chance to back down. Jacob said to his father, "I'm Esau, your firstborn. I've done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." Jacob lies to his father. Now, there doesn't need to be a specific commandment from God covering this exact scenario for us to know that this action is a sin. This is no game. The intention is to steal, and the method is lying and deceiving. And here's how it gets real bad real quick. Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord, your God, gave me success," he replied. You see, the quicksand of sin pulls Jacob down quickly. He may not have intended to invoke the Lord as part of his lie, but when he needed an excuse, he did it. This is an example of taking the name of the Lord in vain. This is one of those things that commandment is talking about. Now, we're 500 years or so before Sinai, when Moses on the tablets will have that one spelled out. But rest assured, Jacob knew. He knew he was stepping over a bright line by choosing to sin against God too. Now, it's not just Isaac and Esau. He brought God into this. He's treating the Lord's name as a tool to further his own greed. And that's a big mistake. We've seen this happen so many times that we can't count, with false teachers and hucksters and politicians invoking the name of God to further their own selfish pursuits. Like Jacob, they won't be guiltless when they stand before their Maker and have to explain why they did that. What happens next? It says, "Then Isaac said to Jacob, 'Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you're really my son Esau or not.'" So Isaac is not initially fooled. Something feels off. So he wants Jacob to come closer. Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He didn't recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau, so he proceeded to bless him. Did it ever make you wonder just how hairy is Esau, right? That feeling the goat skin was like, oh, that's Esau. Man. The trick conceived by Rebekah works enough. "Are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "I am," he replied. Isaac asks again. This reminded me of Peter in the courtyard, about to deny Christ the second time or the third time. Jacob has a chance and keeps choosing to not back down. We have this idiom in English, in for a penny, in for a pound, right? It's actually an English phrase because pounds are not our money, but we know what it means. Sometimes it's good advice. You need to persevere. You need to work at it. You need to keep going. But sin also operates this way. People think they're only committing this one sin or this type of sin. That's the only one I'm signing up for. Only to see what their scheme involves, only to see it snowball on them into an avalanche when one lie leads to another, one action leads to another. Then he said, "My son, bring me some of your game to eat so I may give you my blessing." Jacob brought it to him, and he ate, and he brought some wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." This plan was always going to be worse in the execution than in the abstract. This is a real human being that's being manipulated. Isaac's own father. Much of our modern behavior is now anonymous. We don't see or know the people that we interact with, which makes it much easier to be a jerk online because you're insulated from the consequences. Not so for Jacob. He is looking his father in the eyes. Isaac will learn the truth at some point, right? It is inevitable. This moment is going to linger. The father-son relationship will never be the same. So he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed." To us, what happens next seems trivial, this blessing. Our parents could say all sorts of things about our future. We know it ain't going to make it true. This is not, however, the perspective of the ancient Near East. They took such blessings or curses very seriously. The text of Genesis reflects that belief, especially when it conveys to us what the people whose story it is telling us they were thinking and feeling. Isaac felt this, he believed it, and so did Jacob and Esau and Rebekah. They're all taking this very seriously. This moment means a lot to Isaac, and he thinks he's sharing it with Esau. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's riches, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. In Isaac's mind, God's blessing will be given to Esau. We know instead that it's going to fall to Jacob. It's an act of grace from God either way, because neither Jacob nor Esau would have earned such promises from God. We know that God chose Jacob before the twins were born. Isaac's blessing is echoing God's view, unbeknownst to Isaac and against his will. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed. On the personal level, the elevation of Jacob over Esau was not what Isaac wanted to happen. He would have given that primacy to Esau. We know that God's will was going to be fulfilled. Jacob would have been the one to carry on the covenant either way. But it didn't have to happen this way, through sinful deception. God's plan would have been fulfilled on its own. No one needed to do this. After Isaac finished blessing him and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. The narrative reminds us just how close Jacob came to getting caught in the act. If Esau had walked in and seen this on his arms and his clothes, he would have known what was going on. Things might have exploded into violence right then and there. This could have been the story about how Jacob got caught and his brother murdered him. The truth is, when we choose to sin against each other or against God, we do not control the consequences any more than we do when we choose righteousness. Consequences are not predictable with certainty. But when we choose sin, we take the risk. We're always signing up for the potential of the worst case scenario. When people cheat on their spouse, do they expect to be caught? No. When people do drugs, do they expect to become an addict? No. Right? When people gamble, do they expect to lose their house or their job? No, that's not the way it works. but we know that's what you're signing up for, potentially. Here, Jacob narrowly avoids the worst version of this. What actually happens is pretty bad, but it could have been much worse. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, "My father, please sit up and eat some of my game so you may give me your blessing." His father Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" "I'm your son," he answered, "your firstborn Esau." At this point, Esau has no idea that anything is up. In 30 seconds, he will drastically change his view of his twin brother. This is about to be one of those moments where time seems to stand still. Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." Isaac knows. He knows he was tricked by his own son. It's one thing to have issues with a family member that you think is, taking advantage of the generosity or the gullibility of another family member. You think they're mooching off of your parents or your sibling right. We've had that. This is not that. This is purposeful, planned deception. So how would you feel if this happened to you from one of your family members? Or how would you feel if this happened to your mom or dad, to your siblings, to your children? We would not be happy. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me too, my father." Now Esau knows that his future will never be the same. Now he's going to lose in the material sense, and that hurts. But he's also losing favor and respect and the kind of optimism about the future that you can't put a price on. The moment that comes to mind of how this changes everything is when Charlton Heston is pounding the sand as the waves roll in the end of that classic movie. I know you all love it, Planet of the Apes. Maybe you don't. I did as a kid. He looks up and he sees the wreckage of the Statue of Liberty. It's not really a spoiler, right? It's been like 50 years. And he realizes the awful truth that his view of humanity needs to change. And it comes crashing down around him. It's a great moment in cinematic history. Well, that's where Esau is. He has just been rocked by the horrible truth about what his brother has done to him. Isaac says, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." The horrible truth that his own brother did this to him. It's not an enemy. It's not a random stranger. It was his own flesh and blood, someone who should have looked out for him, not looked for a way to do this to him. That the knife in his back was wielded by his brother makes it hurt all the more. Julius Caesar, in Shakespeare's version of it at least, offers that famous line, right? Et tu, Brute. You probably don't really know what that Latin means. It means you too, Brutus, even you. It was aimed in that scene at his friend, at his ally. But Brutus was not his brother, which is worse. Esau said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he took advantage of me. He took my birthright and now he's taken my blessing." This is the bitter dregs at the bottom of the cup of grief that Esau has to now drink. Jacob did this once before. It's not a one-off, it's a pattern. It isn't a moment's decision. It's a plan that he had in motion for a long time. Then he asked, "Haven't you reserved any blessing for me?" If there's any blame for Isaac, it's this, that he wasn't thinking about his other son when he made his blessing. After the initial shock wears off, Esau asks a practical question about his own future. He knows it's shifted, but how radically? Isaac answered Esau, I've made him lord over you, and have made all his relatives his servants, and I've sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son? Isaac feels trapped. He can't see any way to undo what he's done, even if it was done under false pretenses. The cultural framework here that led him to this point is an unhealthy one with respect to oaths and one's honor. If those kinds of things are trapping us and keeping us in an immoral place, then why are we acting like we're bound by them? So their cultural expectations put Isaac in a box here, and he sees no way out. Esau said to his father, do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. Then Esau wept aloud. In much of Jewish and Christian history, there's been scant sympathy for Esau. His willingness to sell his birthright for a bowl of soup has led to a minimizing of what Jacob did to him. Maybe it's my aversion to bullies and my distaste for scammers talking, but I feel Esau. I feel what he's going through. I hear his pitiful cries. If Esau was a fool, if Esau was shallow or naive, what does that matter? He deserved a better brother than this. He deserved a brother who loved him, not one who was going to cheat him. And I think we would all feel that way if this was our family and this is what we were going through. So here's the blessing that Isaac does give to Esau. His father Isaac answered him, your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck. Isaac tries to bless Esau in spite of what's just happened, but he fails. As a father, his ability to influence what's going to happen next is at its lowest ebb. The rivalry between Jacob and Esau is now going to be in their hands. Isaac can't change it anymore. So how will Esau react to this reversal of fortune? How would you react? Here it is. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near, and then I will kill my brother Jacob. Esau plans to murder his brother when the culturally expected period of mourning for their father's seemingly impending death has ended. He won't disrespect Isaac by killing Jacob the very day that he dies, but his mental clock will be ticking once Isaac dies. Now, I hope that murder would not be in your heart, no matter what anyone, even a family member, might do to you. I hope there's nothing anyone could do to you that would make you want to kill them. I hope that vengeance is not a path you would ever be willing to walk down. Now, I have this hope because I know that Jesus Christ saved you and me by grace. Not because I think any of us are better than Esau. We've just already experienced the power of the grace of God, and that changes how we respond to being hurt by others. Note this, what we do to people, whether it's good or bad, influences how they respond to us and to others. And we will bear responsibility for the part that we play, whether good or bad, when they choose a righteous path or a sinful one. Each of us answers to God for our actions, but we're also responsible for how we influence others. Esau chose to embrace his anger and let it become hate. But Jacob caused the anger. This is an area where our culture resists the notion that we are our brother's keeper, to borrow from earlier in Genesis. We all know how online anonymity has lessened social responsibility as people say and do things because they're disconnected from the hurt that it causes. These are things they likely would not do face to face with someone they have a relationship with, and yet they feel they can do them online. The same lack of responsibility is fostered by modern economic corporate culture that treats both their employees and their customers as numbers, numbers that affect profits rather than people that have a God-given value. So we are more likely in this day and age to be a part of the root cause of anger like Esau's without even knowing it, or to feel the kind of bitterness and frustration and anger that Esau felt without knowing who is to blame, beyond some anonymous person online or some faceless corporate policy. When you call to ask about it, you can't even get a person anymore most of the time. It is indeed faceless. So this modern iteration, it increases our need to be watchful, to be self-controlled. Not only do we have this modern detached version to protect ourselves against, this online and corporate version, but we still have the age-old ones that belong to these family relationships that we have. Things that sound an awful lot like what Jacob and Esau are going through. The point is, we need to be careful how we impact other people. And we need to guard against the negative ways that other people might impact us. When Rebekah was told what her older son Esau had said, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, "Your brother Esau is planning to avenge himself by killing you." The epilogue of Jacob's scheme to defraud his own brother and scam his father will see Rebekah, the mother of both boys, trying to mitigate the fallout from the plan that she helped hatch and nurture. Did she regret this? We don't know. I mean, I hope she did at some point say, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Did she consider this potential outcome? Evidently not. The end result of her role will be a strained relationship with her husband. He could not have been happy when he found out what she did. A broken relationship with her oldest son. How could Esau ever have a relationship with his mother moving forward? We don't know if they ever repaired that. And then one more cost. "Now then, my son, do what I say. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides." A loss of relationship with the son she favored is also the cost she's paying. Rebekah hoped that Jacob would be gone, a short while, 6 months, a year, something like that. And then the family would be reunited. They'll all be sitting around the table again, right? It will not work out the way she planned. If we understand the Genesis narrative correctly, timelines can be a little tricky in Scripture. Rebekah never sees her son Jacob again once he leaves for Haran. She will never meet her grandchildren. Jacob will be gone for 20 years. Now, unexpectedly, the infirm Jacob is actually going to live long enough to see Jacob come back. Isaac will still be alive when Jacob comes back, but Rebekah will not be. How bitter was the cost that she paid for her favoritism? And that's the way it is with sin. We think we know the cost up front. We calculate and we say, I can handle that. I'm willing to pay. And then we find out that we are way in over our heads. Rebekah's story started so well in Genesis. But through her own choices, it will end in regret and sorrow. When your brother is no longer angry with you and forgets what you did to him, I'll send word for you to come back from there. Why should I lose both of you in one day? Famous line, right? The best laid plans of mice and men. Rebekah was never able to send word for Jacob to come home. Better to be separated from one son and estranged from the other than to have one son murdered and the other one put to death for the crime. Not a hard choice to make. By the grace of God, may we be protected from ever being in such a crazy situation as making a choice like that. So if you remember back to when you heard the story of Jacob and Esau, right, as a kid, Sunday school, flannel graph, that kind of thing, perhaps that's when you remember it. It was probably a humorous story, right? This trick that siblings play on each other. No big deal, right? Kids trick each other all the time. Laugh it off. Well, as adults, when we read this story, we know better. This was a real-life family implosion powered by favoritism and greed and achieved by lies and deception. This is a plot that we would expect to see in a trashy soap opera. Not in the kids' cartoon version that sometimes it gets portrayed as, because the choices we make have consequences. May the Lord protect us from the temptation to sow seeds whose harvest we will be forced to reap. A couple things to help you remember this text. Number one, what Jacob and Rebekah did to Esau and Isaac was a sin. No need to sugarcoat it, it was. Number two, it had far-ranging and life-altering consequences for everyone involved, all of them for the worse. Three, may the Holy Spirit guard our hearts from the temptation to harm others, whether they be strangers or family. And then lastly, may the grace of God protect our hearts from the hurt that others would do to us, whether they be strangers or family.